Sinatra 80th birthday tribute, which has 80 Years My Way will be shown on TV a few weeks later. Clad in a sharp grey suit and, unusually for him in those days, a tie, Bob looks decidedly nervous, as if he is performing in front of royalty, which, in a peculiarly American way, he is. His performance is the last of a series of tributes that have been dedicated tonight to the great Frank, who sits accompanied by his wife Barbara in the front row. The story goes that Bob, like the other performers, was going to do a Sinatra number. He and Tony and the string section employed to back all the other performers that night had it all rehearsed. Then, at the last moment, Frank's people had communicated that they wanted Bob and the boys to do his 1964 song, Wrestler's Farewell. This was a song Dylan had not performed for 30 years. But of course, you don't mess with Frank's people, don't do you? It was, as Marlon Brando might have muttered, an offer you couldn't refuse. Do that with your cheeks, an offer you couldn't refuse. But what was Bob to make of the idea that back in the early 60s, Frank and his Rat Pack pals had been screwing around in Vegas, amusing themselves by grooving to The Times They Are A-Changin' album? Was this the same Sinatra who had once called rock and roll the most brutal, ugly, desperate, vicious form of expression it's been my misfortune to hear? But there's certainly no way Bob is going to jump Frank's suggestion and deliver a snarling Maggie's Farm, Newport 65, this is not. The performance opens with some quiet acoustic strumming. Dylan enunciates the lyrics in a reverential near whisper, which stands in total contrast to the showbiz pizzazz of almost all the performers who have preceded him. He pronounces every word with great care. The music gradually rises with a stately grace. Dylan's understated phrasing lets the words breathe with the power of lived experience. Soon it is clear why Sinatra himself likes the song. It is extraordinary how a lyric which Dylan had composed as a 22-year-old, more than 30 years before, now stands as such an eloquent summary of Sinatra's career. A personal testimony of an old man looking back on a tempestuous life with great dignity and poise, yet with unrepentant defiance. The tune of the song is based on the traditional Irish lament, The Parting Glass, which Dylan had picked up from the Clancy brothers, and whose imagery of taking the last drink of life Dylan develops poetically into the song of the narrator who did it my way. But unlike that old warhorse of a song, with its bombastic egotism, we are able to read other meanings into Wrestler's Farewell, as the possibly quite inebriated raconteur is clearly being so defensive about his life that he may well be an unreliable narrator. You can only imagine what other stories those who had tangled with him might tell. The alcohol-related imagery in the early parts of the song chimes perfectly with Sinatra's own hell-raising lifestyle in the past, in contrast to the fact that it will clearly soon be closing time for him. He died less than 3 years later. Lines such as, "Every girl that ever I've hurt, I did not do it knowingly," seem to summarise what you might imagine would be old Blue Eyes' attitude to his famously colourful love life. Dylan's "Every foe that ever I faced, the cause was there before I came, and every cause that ever I fought it full, without regret or shame," can easily refer here to the many personal conflicts Sinatra had experienced in his life. But then the song gets darker. The narrator admits that if he thought too much about all this, he might go insane. But in the end, he redeems himself by admitting humbly that it's for myself and my friends that my stories are sung. The final verse is a meditation on the accumulated dust of time, in which so many rumours accumulate. But then, in what is surely one of Dylan's most accomplished denouements, he declares, using a poignantly extended series of metaphors, but if the arrow is straight and the point is slick, it can pierce through dust no matter how thick. In other words, the rumours may well be true. By now, we can clearly sense that the singer is not really the moral paradigm that he's continually professed to be. But whatever sins he may have committed, the judgment that posterity will make will not be based on any of this, but on how well he has expressed himself. It is a song, ultimately, that a man might sing when he meets his maker. It's a kind of confession, a prayer recited in the hope of redemption, and thus a meaningful statement about the relationship between life and art. Dylan delivers it with what can only be called profound reverence. "Happy birthday, Mr. Frank," says Bob at the end, and the camera cuts to Sinatra himself. It's not surprising that he has tears, those famous blue eyes. So to welcome now to this version of the Tin Foil.